This is Dianne. Welcome to Biters.
And this is Marnell. And if we sound a little funny, it's because we are coming to you from the same room.
The Real Housewives are together at last.
In Podcast Central. Willow, Alaska.
Which is really cold today. I'm colder than Marnell is.
I'm an Alaska girl. You know, it was warmer when I left Juneau, but it hadn't gotten above like 27 degrees. But like it's like negative like 13 or here sometimes that night, so it's a little cold.
It's cold. I started a fire today.
Intentionally.
Oh, that's bad. That bad.
Oh.
So we actually watched the episode together twice.
Yep.
Which is also, I think it's the first time we've ever watched a Walking Dead episode together.
It is. How meaningful.
I know. It's super funny. Only took us 8 seasons. So we're podcasting season 8, episode 4, Some Guy.
So that's Some Guy. I think that's a pretty self-explanatory title.
So I'm totally on the Ezekiel train.
I think we kind of all are. I mean, I don't know how you can't be. I think he rubs very few people the wrong way, but there's, if you watch The Talking Dead, there's always 10% of the world that's haters. So when they do their little polls, there's always 10% of you out there that are crazy. So, whatevs.
But none of them listen to Biters.
No.
2 of them make Biters, but none of them listen to Biters. So, since you kind of talked a little bit about the title, I kind of think that we all just think we're some guy.
Yeah.
And eventually you do. I mean, somehow or another you become significant to somebody else. So while you may write yourself off as just some guy,
yep, you
make an impact.
Some other guy is looking to you to lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the message.
Yeah.
And I think I'll talk a little bit more about Ezekiel's journey, but I think
we went through this with Rick. Rick really thought of himself as just some guy who was trying to get his family through the apocalypse, and now he's, Rick, the widow, and the king. He's one of the trifecta, so...
that's actually a good callback, because in episode 2, where he gets united with the original group of survivors before he meets realizes his family is there, he says to Merle, "I'm just some guy trying to find my family.
Yep.
There's no light meat, there's no dark meat. I'm just trying to or actually I don't think he said it quite like that. I think he said that that there were no racial divisions anymore. He was just some guy trying to find his family.
And Ezekiel did talk about how Benjamin had said, if you're given the choice between to be the hero and not to be the hero, always be the hero.
Right.
And I think all of our heroes in the show, Carol and Daryl, and even the big villains, the governor and Negan, they were just some guy too. I mean, Carol was just somebody's wife and mom. She was nothing. And so sometimes you make the choice and sometimes life makes the choice for you.
Right. Just like Carol said.
Yep.
So, I'm thinking back to our other characters, and I mean, has anybody really been anybody other than just, quote, some guy? I mean, I think the only person with any real power that we've ever seen was Dianne. She was a congressperson. Right,
and I don't want to say that she was ineffectual. She was not going to be a long-term leader. She was not, as someone who had all of this background in leading, she was really unprepared for what was about to hit them.
Well, I think she was hampered by her sons. I think that was her big blind spot.
True, and the town had been so sheltered and everything. I think everyone else that's our leaders and our heroes now are forged in fire, and Dianne really wasn't.
So let's back it up a little bit and talk about our ratings. What was your rating?
I've been hovering in the same little bit of rating for all 4 of the season shows. And this one was a 4.1 Broken Axes.
Which you were 4.2 last time, right?
Right. So I've rated 4 of them, or 2 of them 4.1 and 2 of them 4.2. I'm kind of hovering the same area, and I'm really, really glad that I've kind of kept it low, because seeing what's coming on in the next episode, that's just going to be explosive for me. So
maybe not. Maybe it will
not.
be a lot of build up for nothing.
Well, then it'll get rated lower than 4.1. But yeah, this I'm gonna have you, when we get into our goods and bads, I think I'm gonna have you go first, because my good is my bad. So then there's reasons on either side for both. So I will shore up the middle for us.
Your good is your bad.
My good is my bad.
That sounds really wimpy.
And that's part of it, is this episode kind of petered out for me. You know, there didn't seem to be a lot of big action for me, or big reveals or anything like that. So what was your rating?
So I will actually say that I liked it not as well as I liked the season premiere, but I liked it better than last week. So I gave it 4.3 out of 5 spent shell casings.
Nice. We're kind of in the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also gave it 2 other names. So I think it could be alternatively titled Beside the Dying Tiger.
Oh.
Which is a callback to season 2.
Yeah.
And I think it could be called Two Souls Becoming.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely get into the death tonight. Which Dianne got spoiled at dinner.
I totally spoiled myself. I went on Twitter, which was just dumb.
Yeah, and instantly she looked up across the table from me, and I knew instantly what she had done. And she didn't tell me. She saved it for me, but I just that look on her face, like it just projected Walking Dead spoilered.
I was really bummed out to be spoiled. I was really glad it wasn't Jerry or Ezekiel.
I know. The entire time I'm like, where's Jerry? Where's Jerry? It's not Jerry. It can't be Jerry. Where's Jerry?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we'll talk about it later, but it really should have been obvious to us throughout the episode.
Yeah, you found a good clue.
Yeah.
So the writer was a guy named David Leslie Johnson. We have actually talked about him before because he's written 4 other episodes, 5 total of The Walking Dead. He wrote Chupacabra, which of course it was Daryl-centric, and I enjoyed it. That was kind of where they ghosted Merle back in.
Yeah.
In season 2. Yeah, season 2. And then he also wrote Triggerfinger, which was another one in season 2, and I had to look that one up. It was the one where Rick, Herschel, and Glenn end up in that bar and end up in that shootout.
I love that episode. Yeah.
Might be worth going back and watching that episode again.
And what's funny is the Daryl-centric episode that he wrote. I said during the toxic waste zombies, somebody on Talking Dead was talking about why they couldn't climb up out of that little ravine they were in.
Little Wayne.
Yeah.
He was making fun of Robert Kirkman. It was actually pretty funny.
Yeah, and it reminded me of, I think it was in that episode where Daryl's doing all the flashbacks, where they were at that riverside and there were the zombies that were buried up to their knee in the river mud.
No, I think so. There are a couple of different places where zombies were buried up to their knees by the river. There was one where the episode where the little girl that the governor kind of replaced Penny with, got killed by the buried walkers.
Oh, that's right.
And then there was another one where Rick was helping Herschel reclaim walkers from the creek, and they were...
That one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was later in season 2.
Okay, I felt like that was kind of a callback to that, where it was just that, it was so mucky, and so that little ravine there was so steep that the walkers just couldn't get out of, but you had to kind of deal with them, so...
When I think about Chupacabra, I think more about Daryl fighting so hard to get up out of the ravine. Yeah,
and I think maybe that's where I got my wires crossed. Is there's always that difficulty. You're stuck someplace and you're struggling to get out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this guy, David Leslie Johnson, I think we mentioned this when we talked about him a while ago. He is listed as the writer on what looks to be another reboot of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh.
He was the writer for the recent Dungeons and Dragons movie. He is on what looks like it might be another reboot of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And he is listed for The Conjuring 3, and he wrote The Conjuring 2, which I haven't watched 2 yet. I watched 1 and really liked it because it was kind of morbid and weird and my supernatural alley.
Yeah, I love a good horror movie, but my other half really isn't interested in them. So I haven't watched any of like the Exorcism of Emily Rose, or The Conjuring, or Annabelle. I haven't really watched any of those. So, but I do love me some Nightmare on Elm Street.
So our director is a guy named Dan Liu, Liu. He has never directed a Walking Dead episode prior to this one, and it looks like he's actually only got 3 total directing credits. He's got a TV episode and I think a short, but he's got a bunch of editing credits on Walking Dead, including next week, which is called The Big Scary U, as in university, not as in YOU.
Right.
So I'm not sure what that's all about.
Well, seeing the next week on, yeah, that's kind of a cryptic title because I don't know, is Negan going to try and school Father Gabriel or?
Well, and the IMDb page makes it look like it's going to be told through Eugene's eyes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting.
It will be.
But you'll finally get what you want, which is your answer to Father Gabriel and Negan.
Yes. And so I think even on Talking Dead, Robert Kirkman did confirm that this is all taking place in the same day. Things are happening simultaneously, and I mean we see at the end of this episode where Ezekiel, Jerry, and Carol walk into Kingdom, and it's not even dusk on the same day, and so I think we're gonna get the Savior compound next episode, and it's still in day 1 of All Out War. So
yeah, I don't know that he could exactly confirm that it was the same day, but he definitely confirmed that it was in a very short period of time with lots of simultaneous activity.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's hard for me to know. I mean, I think that this all occurred in day 1.
Yeah, I haven't seen any sunsets, sunrises, people sleeping, people being fatigued or tired, other than
Red-Eyed Rick,
right? Except for I think Red-Eyed Rick was a future Rick.
I do too. I think Red-Eyed Rick is Rick at the end of All Out War.
Yes, me too.
Yep.
It's gonna be our season closer, or maybe mid-season closer. I don't know.
So real quick before we move to featured cast, I just wanted to hit people up with the numbers. So the numbers for last week, Monsters, they were actually down a little bit in same day. It looks like it was 8.5 million in same day and then 12.09 million in Live Plus 3. So there was a 40% increase in viewership in DVR, Live Plus 3, on demand. So it looks like people are really moving their viewing from...
Was there no sports ball that day?
there in fact was sports ball that day. There was sports ball of the Broncos versus the Kansas City Chiefs, right?
Apparently. I podcast Central, so I do not have the Google.
You got your phone. You have the Google if you really want it. And it looks like the Broncos game was 12.5 million in Live Plus 3, so Walking Dead was comfortably on top, but it's still a bit of a lower number than we see. I mean, we've had 20 million people watch.
Yeah, and I'm going to be really interested to see the whole year's rating, all of Season 8 rating compared to all of Season 7. Because so many people claimed that they were not going to watch anymore after Negan bashed in Glenn's brains. It was just too violent. So we'll see if you stuck to your words.
I still see a lot about people jumping ship, and it really bums me out because I still love this show.
I just can't see jumping ship after 6, 7, 8 seasons. I mean, you have cared about these characters for this long. Stick it out for another 4 or 5, Well,
one of my friends, hey Teresa, posted today that she doesn't think she can watch anymore because the animals never survive. Oh. I'm like, it's the zombie apocalypse. No one survives.
It's because of their CGI budget. None of the animals survive.
Although I don't think any of the horses were CGI.
No, they weren't. But then, you got animal handling and you got, animal rights groups to deal with and things like that. So, yes, the animals never survive.
And I know that there were a lot of people who griped about the CGI tiger not being such great CGI, but I commented to Marnell today that I really loved it. I'm sorry. I was almost as on board the Shiva train as I am the Ezekiel train.
And maybe I don't have as a critical eye as other people for those kind of things, but I think there was only one scene where I was kind of like, okay, that one was a little. They need to spend a little more time on that one. But other than that, her up close shots, or when Ezekiel would like lean down to pet her and stuff, like it seemed very realistic to me. And maybe I also. She's very ethereal to me anyway because, a tiger is such an amazing animal, and to have one in the zombie apocalypse would be kind of dreamlike, so.
And it goes back to suspension of disbelief. I mean, isn't that what this is all about? Willing suspension of disbelief. So you have to kind of say, okay, if I'm buying the whole zombie virus thing, I probably need to buy the tiger too.
Yeah, and if I'm buying pretty much unlimited ammunition and gas in the zombie apocalypse, I'm buying a tiger.
I still want to say I think the kingdom is the best of all places. Even with the tragedy for the kingdom this week, I still think it's the best of all places.
That was a big tragedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, featured cast, I wanted to give a shout out to the guy who played, is it Gunther or Gunther?
I'm going to say Gunther.
Okay.
TH.
So his name is Whitmer Thomas. He is not credited on IMDb, so I actually had to look him up on IMDb. And he has lots of TV, one-off TV episodes, lots of shorts and movies. But I will be really honest and say nothing that I really recognized. He's had credits since 2008, but nothing where I was like, oh, yeah, that show.
Yeah, and, I don't know if... on his IMDb, I didn't see any, or I didn't look at him, so I didn't see any pictures or anything, but was it intentional that he looked like a cross between Jeffrey Dahmer and David Koresh?
I think it had to have been, because he doesn't look that way in his headshot on IMDb. By the way, it's kind of a sexy headshot with him dipping his fingers into the V-neck of his sweater, and I was like, that's kind of squicky.
Well, maybe that's why they made him look like a cross between Dahmer and Koresh.
But I had to laugh because Marnell's first comment was like, oh my god, that's like Jeffrey Dahmer. And we were talking about how the My Favorite Murder folks would totally appreciate that crossover. And then what does Chris Hardwick say?
He said he looked like Jeffrey Dahmer. I'm like, Chris Hardwick is a closet murderino.
Yep.
Yeah, so comment on murderinos. Do you concur? Did he look like Jeffrey Dahmer? I kind of, after looking at him for a while, I was like, he kind of looks like David Koresh, too. I think it's those glasses. Those
glasses were huge.
Glasses,
yeah.
And a little bit of the mullety look, but his teeth, I kept looking at his teeth. And
he had, really perfect white teeth.
And he had that small upper lip, and I'm like, that really reminds me of Dahmer and Koresh. So, and plus I just started watching Mindhunter, so I'm totally in, to the whole serial killer genre right now.
Which is really great, by the way, if for the people who are the My Favorite Murder crossover folks. Hey, Ryan. I just have to say, Mindhunter, I'm only a couple episodes into it, but it's really great. And the guy who's playing Ed Kemper deserves all the awards. All the awards.
Yeah. I don't know how you don't get typecast after that, just as, Ed Kemper.
For the rest of your life.
For the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Andrew Lincoln will be Rick Grimes. That guy will be Ed Kemper for the rest of his life. So it didn't have a lot to say about Whitmer Thomas, so I wanted to give a shout out to Carrie Cahill, who is the actress who plays Dianne, our bow hunter.
And I
don't know if she survived.
Yeah. So I think they would have made a point to show her like they did with the lady with the flowers.
Which, by the way, that was one of the saddest deaths on Walking Dead in a long time. I know everybody's freaked out about Shiva, but that was so sad to see that mom with the flowers tucked in her armband.
Yeah, and they flashed on a couple of other Richard. I kept
not Richard, Daniel.
Yeah, I kept referring him as the redhead guy. And I was like, okay, maybe that's the one who dies. He's kind of a tertiary character, and. They kept flashing, everyone hugging their loved ones and saying goodbye, and then Ezekiel just kept turning over body after body after body, and it was all of those people, and it was just so tragic. And here we are waxing poetic about the loss of a tiger, and Kingdom has lost so many loved ones.
Right? How many people do you think they lost? 50? That was a pretty big crowd of walkers.
More than 2 dozen. Because, I mean, if you look at last week's when they were marching through and they won battle after battle without losing one, not one, and then they go and they lose everyone, save for Jerry and Carol. But I would think they would have made it a point to show Dianne and her bow.
I would hope. I mean, I hope that she's still out there.
Yeah,
she was a great character. I know she's a small character, but I really like her a lot.
I do too. Dianne and I are very chick power, and so Dianne was a big character for us, and as a strong woman in the zombie apocalypse.
I would like to say that actress has a lot in pre, post, and announced on her IMDb page. She has an interesting history. She started acting in New Orleans. She studied in Britain and Ireland and then went to Second City.
Wow.
Which, I mean, Second City has produced a lot of well-known folks. Mm-hmm. So it's her history is interesting. She's got a lot of credits as well. The credit that I immediately honed in on was she had a small credit on Stranger Things. She played a nurse called Staff Nurse Caitlin. I don't know. I haven't watched Stranger Things, but I figured that people who are out there who've watched it would be into it.
Interesting. I wonder if that's season 1 or season 2.
I didn't look.
Okay. Because I just finished season 2 before I came to Diane's house, so I kind of want to think that maybe it was season 2. I kind of think maybe I remember back, but yeah. I don't know.
So, I guess I'll say my good, since we're going to launch into good, bad, and ugly. I just loved that this was Ezekiel-centric. And I mean, I joke about being on the Ezekiel train, but I don't think I have been as excited about a character since, I don't know, probably Daryl. I was going to say, says the Ezekiel.
Woman whose house is decorated in the Daryl Angel Wing stuff.
I would just like to say it's pretty much the podcast room and my car fob, my key fob for my car.
And the thing hanging next to the front door.
My bag, yeah.
And your bag. The multi-characters, standees and stuff. Not standees, the little figurines.
The little bobbleheads, the little Funkos.
Yeah.
Anyway, and the other thing that I really liked was the way it showed us Ezekiel's journey, just from some guy to King Ezekiel, and now is he some guy again, or is he, I mean...
He thinks he is.
And Kari Payton said on Talking Dead about how Gunther's maliciousness kind of wormed its way under Ezekiel's skin. But I think at some point he's going to realize all of those people sacrificed themselves for him.
Right.
And I think he's going to realize and appreciate that Shiva sacrificed herself for him.
And that the Kingdomers chose to believe in him. Whether some of them bought into his act or if they chose him because he was a good leader and just put up with his grandiose act. I think that they're still going to look to him to lead now more than ever because... so many people lost their lives to save the king that he kind of owes it to him to trudge on and lead.
So the other thing that's interesting about that is that I really love his flowery speeches. We talked about the Henry V speech for Rick, and we talked about Ezekiel's references back to Henry V. And I wonder how much of it in me is the geek that started out at Ren Fairs and in the Society for Creative Anachronism when I was a kid. I don't do that anymore because I just don't have time, and it's not really my area of interest anymore. But I just wonder how much of me appreciates Ezekiel for that presentation.
Probably a little bit, but I think all of us just like a character. They have their own little niche and their own, there's probably a few people, that get a good chuckle and some other people who, maybe aspire to be more like him because he's so grandiose and,
he's not any more over the top than Negan or the governor. He's just over the top in a different way.
In a different way. Exactly.
And I think in a way that appeals to kind of our generational memory and our sense of history. I mean, I do think that we still have that desire to have that bold and flowery leader. I think that we really do have some generational memory and history in all of that.
I also kind of think that maybe maybe that I lost my train of thought.
You're distracted by the video.
I am. And I don't have a headset on, which is very, very weird.
Right.
But I also kind of think that, it makes him unique, and it also, he very rarely drops the part. He only seems to drop it for Carol.
Yeah.
And then when he was having a crisis of, I don't want to say conscience, but crisis of character, I guess.
When he said to Jerry,
stop calling me that, or don't call me that, and Jerry's like, you are my king, or you are my majesty, or something. And, so I think because he's convincing at it, and he's charismatic at it, and he uses it for good rather than evil, like Negan does. I think that we're all just a little more believable, and a little bit believable to it, and amenable to, that, it's an act. That's not the way normal people talk, but he's not normal. He's the king.
And I would just like to say that Jerry is the conductor on the Ezekiel train.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He is driving that train, especially now. I think Jerry surviving is going to be part of pulling the king back into his role of leadership.
I also think Carol is going to be part of pulling him back. Carol is the new Shiva.
God.
Seriously.
His lioness
tiger.
Instead of tiger.
Yeah.
Yep. He lost a tiger and gained a lioness.
Yeah. All right, what was your good?
So my good is we were a lot less erratic, and the time was a little more linear. If you've listened to the past podcasts, you know that I don't like the time jumps or the erratic location jumps. They show us a scene from Aaron's group, and then a scene from Rick and Daryl, and then a scene from Ezekiel, and then we're back at Hilltop, and then we're, focused on Gregory, and it was just all over the map. And so it was really nice to have a, single group centric episode where we could sit down and focus on one thing, and one thing that's going on. And of course, Daryl and Rick did join the group, but it was still part of that whole act going on, of trying to get the guns and clear out the saviors and everything. So I really liked that we were very Ezekiel centric. It brought me back to and I think I've seen this online too, where people have been like, it reminded them of Clear.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
Yeah, and so it was a little slower paced, and a little character driven and focused, and so I really appreciate that after 3 previous episodes of just so much going on, and so many different time jumps, and
lots of action.
Yeah, lots of action, lots of shooting. This seemed a much, much quieter episode, and a lot more focused. So I kind of hope that's a harbinger of things to come, as far as we're going to slow down and start to focus more on individuals rather than everyone in the group all at once.
I don't know. It is funny, because when we were in season 4, which I was commenting again today how much I love season 4, I just do. We were scattered a lot. We had small groups that we followed a lot, and very character-centric episodes, and there were some people who didn't like that. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that we keep up in this season.
And so that kind of segues me into my bad, and where I'm a hypocrite, which is bad, is that I really don't like it because of the pacing. It becomes slow.
You mean when we have these character-centric episodes?
When we have the character-centric episodes and we don't have a lot of action. It becomes slow, and you also are like, what is going on with the rest of the group? I was very curious about what's going on with Maggie, and what's going on with Aaron and Gracie now, and we've been curious for 3 dang episodes. What the heck is going on with Negan and Father Gabriel? And I've completely forgotten about Eugene and Dwight and Simon and all the other saviors that are stuck inside the compound.
And the Garbage Pail Kids and the Ocean Siders.
Yeah. I completely completely forgotten about them. Garbage Pail Kids probably is just a
decision.
Yeah.
You decided to forget about them.
I've blocked them out of my memory. But yeah, what's going on in Oceanside? I mean, I had the maybe little bit of inkling that what's his name had the fishing poles and the netting and
Morales.
stuff. Yeah, yep. Morales, and that brought me back to what's going on in Oceanside. Where is what's going on with them? So, and who knows when we're gonna get to see them, because we are still in day one of All Out War.
Don't you think, though, kind of going back to your bad, that we need these episodes that have a slower pace and that are more character driven to kind of be interspersed with episodes like the last three that are just so gangbusters, so
definitely
so fast and
I
frenetic.
I try to think that, you know, I still would probably, and this is the hypocrite, I would still probably be complaining if in episode 1 we focused on this group, and episode 2 we focused on this group, and episode 3 we focused on this group. I think, you know, it's a mixed bag. I either way, I'm going to complain.
Just as long as you don't jump ship.
No, there will be no jumping of the ship. I am very worried about my fictional character friends, so I need to know what happens to them.
Well, my bad is small, but I kind of felt like the Rick and Daryl chase scene, I understand that it fit in terms of they were going after the 50 cal.
Right.
But I felt like it didn't really fit the energy of the episode. I felt like it was just kind of spliced in. So it didn't do a lot for me. I mean, I definitely like the part where we see Rick maneuver to the side and Daryl is back in the chase. That was a pretty cool scene.
Because, of course, on the upcoming, for the next episode, we see Daryl dump his bike.
Right. On last week we saw in the upcoming for this week.
And so we all have been biting our nails all week. Is Daryl okay?
Oh, I haven't been biting my nails.
Neither have I.
I've been more worried about Ezekiel.
No, but I did see where that, I mean, if you remember last week's episode, when Daryl killed Minkus. Daryl killed Minkus. Hashtag Daryl killed Minkus. That's a funny hashtag. You should go look it up. But they found out that the Saviors did move the 50 cal weapons, you know, the day before. And so they were actually on their way to that compound to find him. And, you know, they see this truck and that looks like it probably is carrying some large weapons speeding out of the compound. So they make chase. You know, luckily they make chase instead of stopping and checking, you know, Ezekiel and Carol. I don't think they saw him from the road, but they made the decision not to go into the compound because this truck looked like it might be important that was, you know, leaving at a high rate of speed, and Carol was shooting after it. And so they made the decision to make chase, and which of course was the right decision. So I think they did make it fit. The timing was amazing on it. I loved Carol's little smile when she heard the motorcycle. Right. That's Daryl will always have a place in her heart. I think she's fallen for Ezekiel, but Daryl will always have a place in her heart.
I think so too.
Yeah. So.
Well, so what was your ugly?
My ugly.
And was it a good ugly or a bad ugly?
My ugly was kind of both.
You always do that.
I'm so wishy-washy, and I'm such a hypocrite. Shiva dying.
Yeah.
You know.
So why was it a good ugly?
It's a good ugly because I think it needed to happen for Ezekiel to really become a leader. Not the king, but a leader to his people. And to figure out he's not just some guy that, you know, happened upon a tiger and that made him king. Sure, that was probably a necessary catalyst for him to, you know, gain the following that he has, but he doesn't need it anymore. He can move on. And I'm also really, really, what a horrible way to go, to be ripped apart by walkers, but I said to Dianne, I'm really, really glad that nobody in Negan's group or Negan himself did not get the satisfaction of killing Shiva in front of Ezekiel. You know, she went out saving his life, just as he risked his own life to save hers. And so I'm really, really glad you kind of got that symmetry, and none of the saviors got the satisfaction. And, those three are the only ones that know she's dead. As far as the saviors are concerned, she's still a threat to them.
That's a good point.
She could pop in at any time and start ripping heads off.
That's a really good point. So there's still the threat of Shiva as long as they keep it quiet.
Right. The ghost of Shiva will live on.
Interesting.
Yeah, but of course, I'm really sad to lose Shiva.
Yeah, it's bad because it's the loss of Shiva.
Yeah, I mean, as Dianne and I know, that we're both animal lovers, so it's sad when anyone's pet dies, and I look at that, and that not only the loss of Shiva, but the loss of your four-legged companion is a devastating one. So, and to have it happen the way it did was just awful. I mean, he didn't even really get a chance to say goodbye. So that was my ugly. It was not a good ugly, but it wasn't a bad ugly, and it was both at the same time. So that's my wishy-washy hypocriticism.
Well, my ugly was just an outright good ugly. And it's small, but I loved the imagery of Jerry and Carol escorting Ezekiel back through the doors to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the couple of pictures that I have that have been done by Kirk, and I would love to see Kirk memorialize that moment.
Yeah.
I think I may send him an email because it just was really powerful to see the two of them kind of leading Ezekiel in through those gates.
And you can have the ghost of Shiva looming over the scene.
There you go, Kirk. We've planned it out for you. You may not want to do it, but we've planned it out for you. So it was small, but I loved it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a bunch of little moments in the show, and I think all of them involved Jerry.
Jerry.
Oh, Jerry, you're such a cool dude. Thank you for being such a cool dude.
And with that, we might as well step in some rotten potpourri.
Rotten potpourri.
So I thought we were going to get an Ezekiel backstory. We both thought when we saw Ezekiel getting ready in the morning that maybe we were seeing him pre-apocalypse, like getting ready to go into his job as a zookeeper.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe, getting ready to go on stage for something. Because it didn't look like there was enough gray in his beard to be Ezekiel now,
And I think it was just the lighting, but maybe they intentionally fooled us for just a few seconds.
Yeah, I think so. I think we were meant to think that. I don't think they tried real hard, but those of us who overthink everything. Yeah.
So, and in the vein of overthinking, so I was watching Ezekiel say goodbye to everybody and give his speech, and I thought, it's so interesting that we saw him talking to that little blonde boy at the beginning, and he says to the little boy, "Fear not, you are brave." And then we see him coming full circle, and he's unable to speak to the little boy. He just puts his hand on his shoulder before he limps away to his quarters. And I think it was Ezekiel talking to himself.
Yeah.
I think that little boy is representative of Ezekiel's self.
Right. I think he does see himself in a lot of his people, I think I wrote down, where did it go? I didn't write it down. It was, his talk with Carol when he was saying, Carol was basically kind of like, "You have no combat experience,
Right.
And he's like, "Well, I've trained so much, and I've practiced, and I'm have worked sun up and sun down at this and all these other things." And Carol still kind of look at him like, "Well, you have no idea what you're in for, what it's really like out there in battle." And he says, "I will become who I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm prepared to become who I need to be." And I really think that he is going to finally understand what that means for himself. I think it's easy to say the words, but he will finally become the leader that he needs to be, the leader that has lost, probably a third of his people. The leader that no longer needs a tiger to, be the king or be the leader. The leader that has to make the hard decisions and can't always appease everyone with a great speech. So I really think that he will become who he needs to be, and I think he will start to see himself even more in the people that he leads now too, like the little boy.
Mm-hmm. Another great image. I really liked and here's Kirk's favorite word, juxtaposition of him hugging the living kingdomers at the beginning and then them flashing to him under basically that heap of dead kingdomers.
We started out with the "We Are One" speech and everyone hugging, and then they pan up from that, and then all of a sudden it's him surrounded by pieces of all of his followers.
Which, what a bunch of great sight gags. Once again, Nicotero and his people.
Yeah.
It was horrible, but it was really great.
It's funny. It had such, like you said, a juxtaposition, but it also had a creepy sort of symmetry, the being surrounded by the living and then being surrounded by the dead. Yeah, that was pretty terrible. I mean, I love the Talking Dead later where they're like, we can't use the F-bomb, but we can look at a bunch of severed limbs in the field.
Right.
So, I had no idea, but it kind of makes sense that a 50 cal will knock limbs from the body.
So I texted Brian about it, and I said, Brian, what does our resident munitions expert have to say about a 50 cal? And he wrote back and he said something like, big boomer. And then he said, does this have to do with the episode? I haven't watched it yet. And I was like, never mind, no more spoilers. I will ask you talk to me later.
Yeah, they shredded a lot of those. I mean, they blew limbs off of people. It was pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
And obviously they weren't really aiming for the king, because I think one of those 50 cal bullets would have gone through any one of those savior or any one of those kingdomers and gone into Ezekiel too.
That's a good point. I mean, if we were seeing people shredded, how did Ezekiel survive it?
Well, like I said, I don't think that they were specifically aiming for him, because
they said that
we found out the episode before that they're not supposed to kill the king, the widow, or Rick. And and I wasn't thinking about that. So when Ezekiel crawled out from under all of the bodies and he, screams out in great pain and terror of the moment, I'm like, why didn't they just start shooting at him then? And then it's like, and of course the other savior comes along and he wants to take him back to Negan alive.
To put him on the fence.
Right, to put him on the fence. But of course we find out his head on a pike will be just as good. But I think they are specifically trying not to target, if they can help it. They're trying not to shoot the king, the widow, or Rick, which is the name of an upcoming episode, as we know.
Which just looks horrifying. I mean, if they're duplicating that in a title, it's going to be bad.
See, and I think that's the episode that we're going to get where the king, the widow, and Rick all come back together to plot their next move. Yeah. I think they're all going to figure out that, they're the important pieces on the chessboard and somehow try to use that to their advantage. But, so I thought it was interesting in a gross, morbid sort of way, what a 50 caliber bullet could do to a body that it couldn't do to a Jeep. So I don't know if that guy was a really bad shot or if Rick was a really good driver, but
it's Rick.
I'm pretty sure you should have been able to shred that little Jeep with that 50 cal mounted in the back of that truck. Just saying. Back me up on that one, Bri. But my other rant, Brian, is police your brass, right? Like, 50 cal bullets do not grow on trees, especially in the zombie apocalypse. You need to sweep up all of those casings and reload, because I don't know where else they're going to get 50 cal ammunition, unless they got a big old stockpile of it somewhere that, or maybe they were going to send back one of the lower minions to sweep up, but they left a lot of brass around. Police your brass.
Okay, speaking of policing your brass, and this is totally not related to the episode per se, but it is related to The Walking Dead. The Punisher ad with Johnny Barenthal and the Punisher. It looks like it's going to be really good.
It does. Yeah, I cannot wait for that to come out.
And just a shout out, so it sounds like John Barenthal is on this week's episode of the Nerdist podcast, which I don't listen to every episode of the Nerdist, but I'm going to make it a point to listen to that one.
Yeah, my other half actually started like with episode 1 and has listened like all the way through, and I think he's current. I ain't got time for that. But I will definitely try and make it a point to listen to John Barenthal's episode. And then Robert
Kirkman's Secret History of Comics premiered last night right after Talking Dead.
Yeah, I think they were focusing on the origin story of Wonder Woman.
No, origin story of Wonder Woman is tonight, Monday night. Last night was about Marvel.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But it looks like they are going to have John Barenthal on to talk about the Punisher.
Oh, good. Very good.
Yeah, that we haven't watched that, but that show looks really good. Really
and I taped the first episode of Ride. I haven't watched that yet. Missed the second episode of Ride because they moved it to Mondays. But tonight he is riding with Greg Nicotero, so I'm going to make a point of taping that one.
And I need to go back and watch all of season 1 of Ride because...
I didn't watch all of it, but I watched it and it was fun. I mean, I definitely didn't think that I would be into watching Norman Reedus ride around the globe on his motorcycle, but, there you go.
I think if I had the AMC channel at home, I probably would be a fan of the show. So... another thing about the car chase with Rick and Daryl and the Saviors, I loved the move when Rick jumped from his Jeep to the Saviors truck. That was so 80s hero.
I think Norman Reedus referred to it as his Indiana Jones move.
Yeah, I was actually thinking when they were giving chase, I was like, what are you doing in an open-top Jeep with no doors in the zombie apocalypse? How many times have we seen a zombie reach through an open window, let alone in an open-air Jeep? But I guess it worked out for him.
So I had a couple of unrelated things. One was I was totally not convinced by Carol saying that she would sell everybody else out. We talked a little bit about that. And I was thinking about Ezekiel's line to her, and I'm going to clean it up a little for our family podcast, but never BS a BSer.
Yeah.
And I totally thought that is Carol in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah, she gets this tone of voice that, of course, fans of the show recognize that she's being, she's slipping into her subterfuge, Carol. She gets this tone of her voice that's just like, I'm a sweet old lady, trust me, And when she's like, I'll tell you where everyone else is, it was just like, oh, BS.
Yeah.
She's lulling them into her confidence, and yeah. And it worked out in her favor.
The other thing that I thought was symbolic, so Shiva's death, I agree, is symbolic and big for Ezekiel's kingship. Mm-hmm. I also think that the symbolism of Jerry's axe breaking is huge.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Which, by the way, him cleaving that guy in half was pretty amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really, really symbolic was when... after Carol had tried to lull the Saviors into her confidence and they shredded their buddy.
Yeah.
And there's a little firefight breaks out between the two of them and her. And one of the Saviors is like, we got all the time in the world. We can wait this out. She looks over and sees Ezekiel and Jerry, just about to be devoured by walkers at the fence. And so the Saviors have all the time in the world, but Carol doesn't. Save for having to save them, she could have waited out the Saviors. Mm-hmm. This could have been a waiting game, but she had to make a decision, and she chose to save Ezekiel and Jerry and let the guns go. and eventually we did get the guns, and they don't actually know that yet. They don't know the outcome of the chase. So, she made the decision to save Ezekiel. And I think it was more Ezekiel than Jerry. Jerry just...
Well, so that was one of my questions, was if it had been lesser kingdomers, and I hate to say it like that, but it's true, would she have made the same sacrifice?
No, I don't think so. I think she chose to save Ezekiel.
And what's really interesting is that when they were talking to Robert Kirkman on Talking Dead last night, he was like, oh, it's all about the people. Carol saved the people. And I'm thinking to myself, no, Carol saved Ezekiel and Jerry.
Well, and I think she would have thought that getting the guns would be saving more people than losing,
that's true.
2 or 3 or 5 or 10 that were, battling at the fence. I think that it would have been for the good of the many to let those few die. But because it was Ezekiel, she chose to let the guns go.
I think that was the reason behind the choice either.
Yeah, so yeah. I think the symbolism in that is that we're shipping Shazekiel.
Shazekiel. No, Karzekiel.
Oh yeah, Karzekiel.
Ezekiel.
Earl.
Oh, awful. The only other thing and I wrote these down and we had kind of talked about this, but I really liked Ezekiel talking about thinking about who he would be in either iteration, the person who saved Shiva or the person who did not save Shiva, and he decided I wanted to be the one who leapt.
Yeah.
And I really like that line. I decided I wanted to be the one who leapt.
Yeah. And a callback to Benjamin in that conversation of, if you're asked
if you could
to
be the hero, be the hero.
Be the hero. Yeah. And yeah, I think that Ezekiel's going to have more of a weight on his shoulders. I think that he thought that this is what it was to be king and to be a leader. And to his credit, he led people into battle. He didn't order them into battle. He charged through just like the rest of them. He didn't, sit back in kingdom and wait for news. And, to his credit, but I think that he thought that was going to be the hardest thing that he did. And I think the hardest things that he's going to have to do are yet to come. So.
It's the zombie apocalypse, man, of course. I don't really have anything else.
No.
I looked on the Facebook page and there wasn't much, so I just wanted to remind people to please hit us up on Facebook if there's something you want to see. I do kind of feel like maybe we're plateaued a little bit just in terms of fighters and the format and kind of what we're doing. So if there's something you want to see that we're not doing, or, if you've just got an idea for a new segment, we're open. Please talk to us about it. Please hit us up on the Facebook page. You can talk to us at Southgate Media. What else? Like us, rate us on iTunes or your platform of choice.
Yeah. Yep.
Look, I'm sounding like you.
I've been a good influence on her, Rob. We just have to be in the same room to do it.
There you go. There you go. So do you think, actually, since we're looking each other in the face, we can get it right this time?
I just was thinking we should have practiced.
Right? We totally should have practiced. So, remember to take it one dead day at a time. Okay, obviously we just need to be in the same room. All right, everybody, have a good week, and we'll talk to you next week for Buyers.
Yay! Father Gabriel and Negan.